want to spend the morning talking about rivers. I think rivers and waterfalls are a really great grounding to think about our work. The book of Ezekiel for me is sometimes a really terrifying book. It's kind of depressing. It's a book of the people of God in exile and longing, but it ends with this beautiful prophecy of the world being restored by a river of life that has the power to bring God's glory back to the world. And I sometimes think of our work as people working for justice as trying to be the river. Pete Seeger is famous for saying, drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none. And I think of us as being individual drops of water that alone feel really powerless, but together can build power to do great things and to be God's river of life. So today I want to talk a little bit about the elements of a river and what makes a river powerful. If you think about a river, and I live in the Northwest with some of you, so I get to spend a lot of time staring at waterfalls. The thing that makes a water so powerful it can shape rock, it takes getting a lot of water aligned, and it takes momentum. It takes gravity pushing water down. And I think that this is actually a really great metaphor for organized people being able to do God's work, that we can only be powerful enough that we can shape rock or turn a mill when we are aligned by being in strong relationship and when we have momentum, kind of capturing the excitement of our events. And so we know the pilgrimages are going to be a big, exciting event, we hope. And so we're going to talk today about how do we prepare for those pilgrimages by actually doing the outreach to make sure we get lots of people there? And then how do we capture the momentum of those pilgrimages, as Catherine said, to keep our committees going and keep this work going for the long term? So let's start by digging in on alignment. How do we build relationships to kind of align our people to support this event? So one thing I just want to name is that this actually is reflected in studies of how social movements work. Social movements again and again and again show that the two key things that keep people wanting to come to things is that they come there actually not because they care about the issue, they care about the relationships. And actually, one of the best studies of this was of the pro-life movement, of which the Catholic Church is such a big contributor, that people in the pro-life movement and other movements have self-reported that when they got involved in a movement, they didn't know that much about the issue, but a friend asked. And at the meetings, they found connection, they found shared prayer, they found relationship, they found friendship. So we want to think about how are we building relationship into everything we're doing? And then also that they got empowerment, that they weren't just asked to put out chairs or do boring tasks, but they had a sense that what they were doing mattered. They had a clear goal that they met. There was a sense of excitement and success. It felt like that was seen and that they personally contributed to it in a meaningful way, using their talents, and they felt proud of what they did. Okay, so let's dig in and talking about alignment and how we actually make this work. It's simple. We just need to build relationships. In some ways, that seems really obvious, but I do think we need to spend some time thinking about what that means. And that also means that we need to start just by understanding the relationships that exist in our institution. Most of you are trying to organize pilgrimages through a parish or maybe a school, maybe through a diocese. And I want to encourage you to sit down and really think about how relationships exist in your parish or your institution. And I want to be very clear, this is not mapping who's more valuable or more important in your institution. We are all important and valuable because we are children of God. But some people have more decision-making power in our institutions. That's just because of their authority or the way our institutions are structured. Some people are newer to a community. Some people just attend less often, and maybe they're part of your justice committee, but they never actually go to mass, so they don't meet people. So I do want to encourage you to think about your institution and think about who is very supportive of your agenda. You can see I've created this x-axis where more to the left, I've said people against my agenda. And my agenda in this case is really being vocal and care for creation. And then to the right, people who are very supportive. And obviously, ideally, we would get most people up in that upper right-hand corner. That's when we know we can be really successful. But in thinking about planning for pilgrimages, you'll see that on the y-axis, I figured out I'm laying out kind of at the very top, I'm putting the final decision maker, often a bishop or a pastor at a school, maybe a principal. But then who are the people below them that really influence their decisions? And the thing I want to name is that obviously we want to spend time going to the people who are both influential and excited about our work. And we want to ask them to promote our pilgrimages, to support our work, to recruit people to come. But I also want to encourage you to think about the people who are kind of in the middle, who maybe they are dubious about this whole climate change thing, but they are worried about pollution in our communities, or they are worried about the fires that have been happening. Maybe the head of your RCIA or your catechism, who they support your justice work, but they don't normally come to things because they don't have time. What are the things that you could engage them in to say, this is a really important event? Could you get involved? Or can we talk about what's happening with asthma rates in our community and with our catechism kids? Because I really want to talk to you about this pilgrimage. The other thing you want to think about, and to kind of move those people into being more actively supportive. The other thing you want to think about is the people who are maybe very supportive of your agenda, but who aren't that connected in the community, who, again, maybe they only come to the Justice Commission meetings, but they don't actually go to Mass, or they're very new. What can you do to help them become more known in the community? How can you help them become influencers, as we would say in social media? If you know the person who's head of RCIA, can you bring one of your new activists to be in relationship with that person so that you are kind of moving up the influence of your committee and helping them, frankly, build power in your institution so they can be better advocates for your work? Because it is fundamentally about relationships. And I really, if there's nothing else you take from this session, I want to encourage you that promoting these pilgrimages is going to be less about emailing and passing out flyers en masse, and much more about going to the head of your RCIA, the head of your catechism, the head of your Knights of Columbus, and having a conversation. And what's essential is that it's not a conversation where you are lecturing or selling to them why these pilgrimages are important. It's a conversation where you're asking them what they think is at stake in this moment with protecting creation. And again, I really want to be careful about how we're thinking about our lingo. We're not going and asking them, like, what do you think about our carbon footprint? Or what do you think about our CO2 emissions as a country? You're going and asking them, how do you feel about what's going in our community with the recent natural disasters that happened? How do you feel about the future of these heat in the Southwest for our children? How do you feel about what's happening with pollution in our city or about this natural disaster that happened recently? Asking them to share a story about why you care about this work. And people are generally naturally going to respond with their own stories about what they see happening in the community. Some of you have heard me talk about hosting an event that we had to evacuate in California because of forest fires, and how frightened I was, and how frightening it is to live in a world where I have to be in charge of saving people's lives due to forest fires. And I tell that story, and then people generally kind of naturally like tell me about their fears around what's happening with our climate and our communities. We share about what's going on with us, and then we think together about what it's going to take. And you at that point share about why you think these pilgrimages are important, why you think Christ and this moment with the church is calling you to take action. And you hope to listen to hear how they're being called in this moment. And these are conversations where you're starting with a story from yourself, but really you're hoping to do listening and understand what they care about. You might also ask them about a saint that inspires them and connects them to their relationship with creation. I was recently talking to somebody about the Vietnamese martyrs, which are an important figure here in Seattle, and realizing that the connection to the jungle and the sense of safety and God protecting people in the jungle was really important, which is something I'd never thought about. And I started to think about, oh, how could we incorporate them into the pilgrimages we're doing here in Seattle? So again, I just want to emphasize most people come for the relationships. And even if they came because they happen to care about the issue, the ability to get people to stay in the work is about the quality of your relationships. Are you singing? Are you sharing personally? Are you praying together? And again, it's it's also just what Christ called us to do, right? As people of God, we are called to build the church. We are called to spread the good news. We are called to be in relationship. Okay, so let's move on to momentum. How do we build some excitement around these pilgrimages? And how do we capture the excitement to be able to power our mill to keep the work going? So, one is thinking about leadership, not just going to people in your institution and asking them if they will support your work, but having them think about how they and the people that they're interested in getting engaged. And often your people are thinking about their group of high school students, their group of parents, their group of their Knights of Columbus that are struggling, that they want to get more involved. What are ways that they could help lead in your pilgrimages, not just promote? So that's things like, could the catechism students do an art project? Can they have a role? We have youth on this call who are taking a big lead on pilgrimages in California. What are the ways that they can engage their students meaningfully? Maybe they do the opening prayer. Can people from your liturgy team write a prayer, do something creative, not just have a prayer that you wrote or from the Laudato Si book that they're going to read, but something where they're really contributing in a meaningful way? And also, people don't have to contribute just at the pilgrimage. Maybe you have a deacon or a priest or a bishop who could do a commissioning prayer for the pilgrims during Mass, but that at least gets them more connected to the sense of pilgrimage. Even if they don't come, they may be more interested in hearing about it after, maybe more interested in featuring you in their newsletter. We just want to have people be in relationship with the event. And then I was also sort of thinking like Knights of Columbus are always my big get. How can I get the Knights of Columbus to want to be involved in this? And I don't know about your Knights of Columbus, but in parishes I've worked with, they tend to be attracted to roles where they're getting to protect or help people feel connected to practical things. And so I was thinking about like, we're going to need marshals. I would love to recruit my Knights of Columbus to be marshals. Or again, I'm thinking a lot about ones here on the West Coast where we're thinking a lot about fires and drought. What would it look like to spend 5 or 10 minutes on our pilgrimage talking about climate resilience? And I think actually there's some Knights of Columbus who would love to share about natural disaster readiness. We have some Knights of Columbus who have created fire preparedness toolkits, and to let them spend 10 minutes sharing about that, which actually would be a really great way to build bridges, because we also sometimes have some of our biggest doubters in that community. And we'd love to get them more involved in talking about our shared values around nature. Maybe inviting somebody who has a real pride and joy in hunting and being in creation to talk about why creation is important to them. And again, just thinking about what are all the things that you were planning on doing that you could ask somebody else to do. And especially if they are tasks that are creative and meaningful and not just things like typing up data or putting out chairs. Do you need somebody to do childcare? Do you need somebody to make art? So think about all the tasks that you want to do, and then think about which ones could you give away to other people that you feel like you don't need to be in charge of. And I took this template from Paul Campion, a really well-known organizer for a climate group called Sunrise, which some of you may have heard of. So then the last thing I want to talk about very quickly is, okay, we've done all this stuff to prepare to have a great pilgrimage. How do we then capture the momentum from that pilgrimage? I don't know how many of you know the feeling I have of you've spent 6 months preparing for an event, you got 400 people there, it was amazing, and then you try and go sleep for a week, and then you realize like, oh shoot, I should have sent a follow-up email. How do we actually like think about how we capture the like interest in this event? And it's too late, frankly, after I've slept for a week because I needed a break. We really need to prepare ahead of time to capture that momentum. So, how do we do that? You write a follow-up email for the event. You write it before the event happens. You do not take a break for 4 days and then send the email 4 days later. People have sadly forgotten about your event. They forgot how they felt. They forgot how exciting it is. You write the email beforehand. You schedule it. You get some young catechism student who knows how to schedule an email, and you send it later that day or the next day. Do not let more than 48 hours pass before you send that follow-up email. You can only send that email if you actually captured the names and emails of people who came to your event. I'm going to ask all of you to raise your right hand. I want you to say to yourself, I solemnly swear that I will have a sign-in sheet at my pilgrimage or pre-registration. and that I will assign someone ahead of time to type up that sign-in sheet and get it into my email listserv. I am not going to spend 6 months preparing for an event, then have 200 people come and never be able to contact them before. I will have sign-in sheets. I will have somebody assigned to distribute those sign-in sheets, either a table or somebody walking around with clipboards. And we will put them in our online system. We will not lose them in the back of our car. Have a clear invitation and next step planned. People who are at this pilgrimage are going to be excited. Hopefully, they had a spiritual moment. Ideally, it was a moment of conversion. What is the next thing you're inviting them to? I know it seems hard to think about the next thing when you're already overwhelmed with your pilgrimage, but even if it's just a follow-up meeting, maybe it's just a celebration of the pilgrimage and you're going to have a pizza party. But for people who come and felt excited, you need to know already what is the next thing they can do. It should probably be something about a month, 2 weeks to a month after your pilgrimage that they can get involved in. Maybe it's just a Zoom celebration, something really easy, but you want to have it now. You want to have that date ready at the pilgrimage. Ideally, you have a QR code or a place where people can sign up at the pilgrimage for that next step. A really easy way to do that is pledge cards. Maybe during the pilgrimage, you distribute pledge cards for people to take a next step. I sometimes think of these as covenant cards. We're creating a covenant to live into Laudato Si. And then also, we want these events celebrated. We're going to do our next training call about media, but the most important media is your parish and your diocese and your local Catholic community. And often those people just need somebody to write the article. So make sure you have someone assigned to take photos, but make sure you have somebody ahead of time who's thinking about writing this up, getting it sent into the Catholic Climate Covenant or Laudato Si movement, getting it posted to Facebook. If a tree falls in the hears it, but I know if you do a pilgrimage and nobody sees it, they don't get converted. We want to make sure you see it, and that's about you recording it so we can amplify it and distribute it. Lastly, and most importantly, and I think this is what our speaker is going to talk about, have a plan to identify new leaders who seem excited about this. Make sure your planning team has a debrief, again, pre-scheduled, where you can talk about, hey, here are the 5 or 6 leaders who, like, I never thought our catechism teacher would care about this. Who knew that our Knights of Columbus was a big Sierra Club supporter? We are going to have a meeting and talk about going back and doing more one-to-ones with those people to get them more invested. And that also just means, like, can you have a greeter? Can you have somebody who's in charge of taking questions at the end so people can come up to you and say, hey, I'd love to get more involved? Pre-think these things will make your follow-up much easier. And that's my time.